Jumping Joey. Once upon a time, in the Australian bush, there lived a young kangaroo named Jumping Joey. Jumping Joey thought that he could jump over anything and spent most of his time boinging around the country looking for new things to leap over. One particularly fine day, he was boinging and bouncing through the bush when he spied Mrs. Koala up ahead, hanging out her washing. "Oh, I could jump that clothesline easily," he thought, and without even stopping to stretch his legs, he bounded up and over both the clothesline and Mrs. Koala. Mrs. Koala was not pleased. Jumping Joey had given her such a fright. "Can't catch me!" Jumping Joey shouted as he boinged off down the track. "Can't I?" grumbled Mrs. Koala, and she puffed and panted and waddled after him. Jumping Joey found that the track led to a country town, and he actually stopped in the middle of a very bouncy boing when he saw that there was a circus camped on the edge of the town. He had read about circuses in the books his mum kept for him to read at night when he was curled up in her pouch, but he had never actually seen one. He had read about elephants too, and now he could see not one, but two. "I could jump 2 elephants easily," he thought, and without even stopping to stretch his legs, he bounded up and over both those elephants. The 2 elephants were not pleased. "Who does that little fellow think he is?" they trumpeted. "Can't catch me!" Jumping Joey shouted, as he boinged back into the bush with 2 elephants thundering after him and Mrs. Koala puffing and panting and waddling along behind. Jumping Joey came to a billabong. He was a long way ahead of the animals which were chasing him, so he stopped for a drink. "I could jump across this billabong easily," he thought, "but this time I will take a run up." So he boinged back along the track a bit, stretched his legs, and bounced faster and faster towards the bank of the billabong. It was his best jump yet, but unfortunately, just as he was leaping above the middle of the billabong, 3 parrots came flitting and fluttering across his flight path. The 3 parrots were not pleased. They did not expect to see a flying kangaroo. "Can't catch me!" chuckled Jumping Joey as he landed lightly on the other side of the billabong with a tiny tail feather tucked behind his ear. "We'll see about that!" squawked the 3 parrots, and they flitted and fluttered after him, followed by the 2 thundering elephants and 1 Mrs. Koala puffing and panting and waddling along behind. Jumping Joey could see the farmer's fence ahead. Jumping Joey could also see the farmer's 4 horses on the other side of the fence. Can you guess what Jumping Joey decided to do this time? "Can't catch me!" Jumping Joey called as he sailed over the backs of the 4 horses. Now Jumping Joey had 4 horses galloping after him, 3 parrots flitting and fluttering after him, 2 elephants thundering after him, and 1 Mrs. Koala puffing and panting and waddling along behind. Mr. and Mrs. Rabbit and their 3 babies had just decided to pop out of their burrow to nibble the grass when Jumping Joey boinged out of the bush and bounced into the middle of their lunch. "Can't catch me!" they heard as he trampled their grass. Jumping Joey looked over his shoulder and decided to head for home. After all, now there were 5 unhappy rabbits hopping after him, 4 horses galloping after him, 3 parrots flitting and fluttering after him, 2 elephants thundering after him, and 1 Mrs. Koala puffing and panting and waddling along behind. "Open the pouch, Mum, I'm coming in!" Jumping Joey called out when he got near home, and with one last boing he bounced inside. Only a tiny piece of tail, just like a twig, could be seen sticking out from his mother's pouch. 5 unhappy rabbits came hopping up to Mrs. Kangaroo. "Have you seen Jumping Joey?" they asked. Mrs. Kangaroo shook her head. The rabbits kept on hopping down the track. 4 horses came galloping up to Mrs. Kangaroo. "Brr! Have you seen Jumping Joey?" they asked. Mrs. Kangaroo shook her head. The horses kept on galloping down the track. 3 parrots came flitting and fluttering up to Mrs. Kangaroo. "Have you seen Jumping Joey?" they asked. Mrs. Kangaroo shook her head. The parrots kept flittering and fluttering down the track. 2 elephants came thundering up to Mrs. Kangaroo. "Have you seen Jumping Joey?" they asked. Mrs. Kangaroo shook her head. The elephants kept on thundering down the track. 1 Mrs. Koala came waddling up to Mrs. Kangaroo. "Have you seen Jumping Joey?" she puffed and panted. Mrs. Kangaroo shook her head. Mrs. Koala decided she had to finish hanging out the washing, so she turned around and went home. "Now," said Mrs. Kangaroo as she dragged the twig of a towel from her pouch and held her son up where she could look him in the eye. "What's this all about?" Jumping Joey told her everything. His mum explained to him that he had a special talent for jumping, but he shouldn't use it to annoy people. He should try to use it to help people instead. So the next day, Mrs. Kangaroo took Jumping Joey to visit all the animals. Jumping Joey said he was sorry for annoying them, and they all talked about ways that he could use his special talent for jumping to help make the bush a better place. And that is exactly what he did. The end.